That's my belief. And meanwhile, true pandemics of crime, violence, death, destruction, and debauchery are happening across this country. And we start by zooming in on some Democrat cities, because that's the real winter of death. The real winter of death is going to lead up to June 2022. It's going to lead up to the Supreme Court decision on Roe v. Wade type things. It's going to lead up to the November 2022 midterms elections, especially if Roe v. Wade is overturned or changed in a major way. All of this is going to explode. All of this is going to lead to tinder points. It's going to lead to powder keg moments that could lead to civil unrest to the point that even drives us to civil war. All right. The election of 1860 was very similar to what may be coming up in 2024. So hold on to your asses. We're not going to be in Kansas anymore. This shit gets worse. And you feel it. I feel it. You feel that in the pit of your stomach? We all feel it. We're all going through this together. So don't think for 1 second stuff's not going to get worse. It is. That feeling, we're connected. We're all connected. We know something wicked this way comes. So we have to be prepared. We have to fight for it. Right now would be a great segue if I actually had a sponsor, but I don't. So don't worry. We're not going to Ben Shapiro this episode. Listen, the severe death, the severe illness, the winter of death, doom, destruction, and gloom starts in Democrat cities like Chicago, which has already recorded over 800 homicides year to date in Mayor Lori Lightfoot's Chicago. Chicago, listen, if Florida is the cock and balls of this country, Chicago's the anus. I'm telling you, Chicago is a shithole. Besides some good, they got to have good food because you're miserable when you live there, when you visit there. I've spent a lot of time in Chicago. We'll have a talk about it one day. But trust me, not a great place to be, not a safe place to be. Scared residents living in fear for their life. 800 homicides year to date. The Chicago Sun-Times reports the city hit the figure of 800 homicides on Tuesday when 23-year-old Sheridan Freeman was shot dead inside a home in West Pullman. By Thursday, WBEZ Chicago noted the number of homicides in the city was at 812 for the year. All right, Chicago has had a long problem with gun crime, and the vast majority of this year's homicide victims were killed with guns. Now, the left thinks if they get rid of guns, that'll help everything, but the criminals aren't going to get rid of guns. The inner cities aren't going to get rid of guns. It'll just lead to more violence and burglary. You see, these socialists think that they can engineer people's human nature, people's emotions, people's feelings, and if they just remove the things from the lab experiment, from the rat cage that make the rat do crazy things, the rat won't do crazy things anymore. But all us rats, you see, we're wired to do crazy things because we're rats. We're humans. It's human nature. If there's an opportunity for violence, some people will be violent. If there's an opportunity for greed, some people will be greedy. There's no fixing that. The way you fix that is by making the laws strict and holding people accountable. But they don't want to do that in Chicago. That's not what Chicago does. All right. It says that at least 11 people have been shot and killed this week alone. And remember, this was from a couple days ago. So what I want to do is I want to show you something a little more recent. You see, I did some digging and there's this guy named James Hawthorne. All right. James Hawthorne has this thing called Ghetto News Network. He calls himself Jay Hustle. He lives in Chicago, in these areas, and he follows the police scanners. And I want to show you some excerpts from the police scanner, December 17th. All right. This is just a few days ago, not even much. This is 2 days ago. All right. And this is live. This is what was happening. This is going on again and again and again. This is, mind you, within the span of an hour or two. I'm not going through this and talking about weeks and months here. We're talking about again and again and again. 111th and Dottie Road. 2 people shot at this location. 1 killed. The 14-year-old was transported to Comier Children's Hospital. His brother was unable to be saved. All right? 24 rounds just fired. 73rd and Chaplin. This is detected by the spot shotter camera. Apparently there's a special camera for it. 23rd and Rockwell. Multiple rifle rounds just fired from a white vehicle. More than one shooter detected by the spot shotter camera called in by the sheriffs nearby. This is in the span of 20 minutes, folks. All right. That's 8:20. All right. 8:15 p.m. and 8:11. All right. Not even 20. This is in the span of 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We've got people shooting out of the side of vehicles like Tommy guns in gangster movies. All right. We're not done. 8:05. Another woman just robbed and carjacked at gunpoint. Offenders last seen going southbound in her stolen vehicle. That was Lexington and Loomis. All right. 64th and Marshfield. A man just told dispatch his crazy girlfriend slapped him in the face with a spatula. That's a funny one. 123rd and Princeton. Call just came into dispatch saying a woman is arguing with a man and woman trying to stab them. 68th and Oakley. 28-year-old man shot in the leg. The shooting was accidental. Had his finger on the trigger while tucking it. All right. No CCL, no concealed. He's being arrested, but he'll be let right out. It's a Democrat-run city. 57th and Aberdeen. All right. Keep in mind, it's 7:43 p.m. It's been like 25 minutes. All right. This whole thing, I'm reading all this. 25 minutes. This is all within a small radius. 2 more people just shot. EMS on scene. Multiple rounds detected by the spot shotter camera. They have a special camera to detect when people get shot. All right. Props to James Hawthorne, by the way. If anybody can contact him, give him his props for doing this good work here. Illinois and Wabash Avenue. A man and woman were just shot by someone in another vehicle. Police on scene. EMS en route. All right. We've had enough. We've gone through and through and through. These things keep happening and they're not stopping. And we go, winter of death, Joe Biden. Winter of death? There's 4 seasons of death happening in all Democrat cities. There's a spring of death, a summer of death, a fall of death, and a winter of death in Chicago. All right. And it doesn't just end here. It's not just gun violence, and taking away the guns don't fix that. Stupid Democrats. It's an epidemic of murder, death, destruction, and chaos, and it all starts with Democrat policies. They say the system, BLM likes to preach their socialist nonsense. The system, it's systemically racist. No, the Democrat Party is systemically racist. And for decades, even centuries, they've put in place policies that have been racist. Don't direct your anger at us Republicans. Join us Republicans, and let's fix this capitalism and do it right by taking these Democrat policies and tearing them in half. Let us help. All right. Let us show you. Let us explain to you how their policies destroy inner cities, black neighborhoods, and black families, white families, inner city neighborhoods that have poor white people. There are poor people of all colors. I was one of them. All right. I grew up like that. Listen. Skin color don't matter. It really doesn't matter. Being poor is poor, and poor sucks ass. It really does. But free shit doesn't help us. It doesn't make us better. It doesn't make us stronger. Discipline, courage, resistance makes us stronger. Doing it the right way, the nonviolent way, the peaceful way, but with consistent force and pressure. All right. That is how you make change happen. That is how you change your life. All right. And if we need to change some policies, let's look at these Democrat policies that have fucked people for centuries. All right. I'm going to say centuries because it's been well over 100 years that some of these policies have been in place. All right. So why not? Why not we take a look? Why don't we take a look at certain things? I agree with that. I do. But destroying our way of life, making everything worse, turning us into a socialist hellhole so that we can what? Punish some folks, punish white people. It's not white people. It's a group of white people called Democrats who fought to keep people enslaved during the Civil War. Nobody switched groups. Nobody changed parties. Your racism that you're experiencing, all the racism that a lot of minority groups are experiencing is coming from these Democrat policies. That's what we have to look at. All right. But what's going to change it? We need to hear voices, not just from white people. We need to hear voices from inside those cities, from inside the barbed wire, going through the hell. People like this James Hawthorne guy, or people I've read about like this rooftop preacher. All right. There's a pastor in Chicago. He does this podcast on a rooftop. It's called Rooftop Revelations. And I thought this was a beautiful story that helped explain the problems. And we're going to go through it and we're going to talk about it a little. This episode is going to lead to a big point. I want you to see the real winter of death, what it is and what is going on, because it's not just the gun violence. It goes beyond that. And we're going to touch on this real sensitive topic after we go through a couple more of these articles. So in Chicago, it says, according to the Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition, an estimated 882,000, all right, 882,000 adults in Chicago possess low basic literacy skills. That's almost 1 million people that have trouble reading and writing. Think about that. How broken is that? If these children, all right, if the children of these adults do not receive in-depth academic intervention in pre-K, they're 60% more likely to require costly remedial and specialized education classes. There are many families on the south side of Chicago where Pastor Corey Brooks ministers that have passed along illiteracy through several generations, a heartless cycle that profoundly damages individuals, families, and society at large. All right. All put in place, all beginning with Democrat policies. This problem is one key reason why the pastor climbed onto the top of a roof on November 20th, 2021, and will not come down for 100 days. Years earlier, he started a charter school within his church to help reverse the illiteracy trend. He paired students of all ages with after-school tutors. Yet he said his efforts feel like a drop in the bucket when neighborhood public schools pump out illiterate graduates year after year. That's what they do. It's true, folks. These charter schools, these pastors, these priests, they try to go in and help these kids, but the government says, nah, it's too hard for them. So instead of showing them how to learn better, getting individualized, specialized education one-on-one with these students, they just pass them. They just say, nah, you're good. Here's a participation trophy. And it sets them up for failure later in life. Don't you see how racist that is? Don't you see how that system right there screws black people? It screws all people that are going through that. Anybody poor that's going through that system is going to get screwed, regardless of their color, regardless. Listen, I have a real high IQ, all right? Not trying to be braggadocious, but I have to say it for this story. I was put in 4th grade. My school was one of these schools in South Florida in the Democrat Blue County that said, everybody's got to get a trophy. Everybody's got to pass. Everybody's got to go through. And if you're too gifted, we can't handle you. And I was a little too advanced. So do you know where they put me? They put me in the class for people with mental deficiencies, with mental retardation. All right. With nothing against folks. All right. With Down syndrome, nothing against folks that are a little slower. All right. Because people like that, they lead productive lives. They're good people. It had nothing to do with that. What it had to do with was the fact that because I was smarter, they put me back. They held me back because it wasn't fair to the other children. All right. I remember the teacher of that class in 4th grade, Miss Schuler, and she used to apologize to me. I used to sit there all day and polish. She had a wooden ship in there and different pieces of art, and I just polish it because there was no class. There was no teaching. And I could see in her eyes that she knew I wasn't supposed to be there, but the school punished me. All right. That's what they do to children. All right. That are either too smart or too stupid. Because if you're too stupid, not by any fault of your own, but from a failed education system, failed family system, failed system in general, if you're too stupid, they put you forward and that screws you as well. So if you were smarter and they held you back, that's going to screw you from doing better in the future. But if you're not, and they still pass you anyway without helping you, without bringing you up to speed, they're literally setting these young people up with these false expectations for some glorious future when in fact they're leading them right down the path of damnation. It's absolute travesty. It's wrong. And it's child abuse. It's child abuse. It happens to these kids all the time. All the time. All right. It says on day 25 of his vigil, the pastor invited David Hogue, president of Warner University, to the roof to discuss education. It says, I think it goes back farther than the schools. I think we got to get our families and our parents much more involved in the lives of our kids and their education. These parents need to hold the schools more accountable to the curriculum and standards, and we see that across the country. But the pastor, he agreed with some reservations. So what did he say? He said, we got to do something with the parents. But in our neighborhood, all right, 80% of the households, and he's talking about the hood, all right, he's talking about the ghetto in Chicago. He says in our neighborhoods, 80% of the households are single parent households. Think about that, folks. 80% single parent households. That isn't done because dad didn't want to be there and mom didn't want to be there. There's a culture of this. It's been beaten into people by Democrat policies. They're racist policies meant to destroy black families. And what do we have? 80% destroyed black families. Mothers, fathers, mostly single mothers, working their ass off, trying to do everything they can, praying on their knees to God every night, hoping their kids won't get involved in gangs and drugs and violence. But sometimes that's the only way. Some of those kids have no choice. They have no choice. And by the time opportunity comes, it's too late. It's too late. All right. The pastor said that we got these moms who are having a tough time with the educational system failing the kids. The problem that the pastor describes seems insurmountable. Many of the single parents that he knows work 2 low-paying jobs to make ends meet. My mom worked 2 to 3 jobs when I was a kid, just like this article's talking about. Then there are kids whose parents simply don't care about them. Blame can be casted upon so many aspects of society, yet the problem remains, and the cost to society from poor health outcomes to government dependency, it is quite profound. The pastor detailed how he believes the lack of a strong education drives a lot of the violence in his neighborhood. He said generations after generations in our community are suffering because of our watered-down educational system and the lack of a strong educational. Even if it's a single parent, I have to go back to the family. Even that single parent has to be a champion for the kid. But let me ask you a question. How do you champion your kid when you're working 2, 3 jobs, you're dog-ass tired, you never see your family, and you're hoping they survive? Where's that kid going to get their education? They're going to get their education from the street. We have to fix the culture in this country, folks. We have to fix the education. We have to fix the family. We have to destroy the Democrat policies that have held people down in inner cities for years. And we have to do it fairly without screwing with people in rural areas. There's a balance to everything, and we can find that balance. But unfortunately, they're driving people, literally driving them to war with each other. It doesn't matter about race. All right. They talk about white supremacy, but you have to understand it's been redefined. White supremacy has nothing to do with skin color. White supremacy has to do with a mindset. It's a mindset of working hard, being disciplined. They've rebranded, just like Coke going to Coke Zero. All right. The racists, the left-wing Democrat racists rebranded their racism. They changed all the definition. They've confused everybody. All right. This is a pastor. This guy has a church. This guy's saying that churches are failing. Education systems are failing. Families are failing. So how do we fix it? How do we fix the culture? Can we fix it in the church?